In 2008, Brad Johnson had contact with a Syrian extraterrestrial being, and since that time, he has also met and communicated with a variety of other beings, including those from the inner earth. He is the founder of Wisdom Nexus, a popular YouTube channel, and also he is the promoter of the Earth Intelligence Report, as well as he does wisdom teachings through his YouTube channel and his website. He has been recently getting information about Three Eye Atlas, about some major changes that are about to happen to the Earth, some really big information about what we can expect in 2026.
You're listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Well, welcome, Brad, to the show.
I'm glad to be back. Thanks for having me, Michael.
Yeah, great. I really am enjoying this new Earth Intelligence Report that you've been doing. I think that's something that's very helpful for people to give a roundup of what's happening around the Earth from the perspective of the kind of psychic communications that you do. So, maybe just give people a little bit of a teaser as to what it is that you do in the Earth Intelligence Report that you release through your YouTube channel.
Yes, I had my Earth Intelligence Report on my YouTube channel for quite a few years now, and it was just a feeling to kind of bring it back again, because as I reviewed a lot of what was popular on my channel, it was the Earth Intelligence Report that has got a lot of attention. It has got a lot of viewer feedback, and so I thought I need to come back and do this again, because I've just been busy with other ideas. And so I decided to bring it back. When I first brought it out, it was really just me doing a voice narration with text on the screen showing nice, beautiful backgrounds of the Earth Intelligence Report. But basically, it's what I would know as connecting with the Consortium of Infinite Intelligence. So what that is that's something that came to me back in 2010. It was after I was channeling Adronis, and I was staying with a friend at a friend's house for a while, and I was on the computer, and I was just getting this download of all this information that just started streaming through me. And I said, oh, I got to write this down. And so I just I would go into my usual channeling state as I would with Adronis, and I just start channeling this. But it really didn't have a personality. It's much more of a collective. So you're basically tuning into a collective consciousness that's giving you a stream of information, but it's an interactive stream, which means I can talk to it and it can talk back to me. Right. And so it was talking a lot about forecasts and predictions, even going back to 2010. It wasn't the Earth Intelligence Report at that time, but it would just be little newsletters and articles that I would write. And then I would pass it on to my lists about, looking at current events and looking at forecasts. And then I started to move it into the video form that it was a few years ago. So the Earth Intelligence Report is just one of my new videos that I put on the YouTube channel to give an extra perspective on things, to kind of look at things much more from an Earth collective viewpoint and getting much more information about that. It's a little bit more of a different flow than what I'm doing with the Wisdom Nexus. I do those on Friday. That's my webcast. And I have a lot of interaction with people there. Whereas the Earth Intelligence Report is just a communicated message that will talk about many different things. One of the recent ones was about Three Eye Atlas. And the next one that's coming up is going to be about human guardians and looking at the ancient Anunnaki, and also looking at probably even to inner Earth beings as well. So it's giving us a lot more intel just on what's happening in the world, kind of from a collective viewpoint on seeing current events unfolding that is not really talked about in the mainstream.
Now, I know you communicate with a variety of beings, but you also complement that with your own psychic skills, because I know you do tarot readings as well. So that's really, I guess, tapping into your higher self.
Yeah, I mean, tarot readings is part of it. I do that sometimes. Usually it's connecting to the Akashic Records So I will go into the Akasha and I will start getting information, but I don't even really need to do that either, right? So there's times where I can go into the cards and I can do a reading there. There's times I can bring Adronis in and he can do a reading on somebody. There's times where I go into the Akashic records and it can give me information. And then there's just times where I'm just in touch with the higher self and a lot of the information comes through. So it's basically, this is what I would refer to as being like a matrix rather than the idea of a channel in that way, because there's many outlets that I can go to look into things. Of course, I've done empathic interfacing with Athena of the Delphi, the inner earth civilization that lives under Greece, so I can connect with her, right? So I can connect with Adronis. I can connect with a few other different types of star beings as well too, if I choose to. But I often will go to the highest intelligence, and the highest intelligence will come through me just through a natural flow. But it depends. If a person wants to do a reading with me on tarot, it happens. Akasha, it happens. Adronis, it happens. But there's just a matrix of different things that I can connect to either one at a time or simultaneously.
Yeah, can you maybe just explain how you would be able to tap into the Akashic records? I mean, is it like third eye opens up and you can all of a sudden see into them? I mean, how does that work?
No, it's nothing to do with the third eye opening up. Really, it has to do with your brainwave states. So basically, the more that you're training yourself in meditation, there's simple devices that you can get nowadays where you can wear a band over your head, and it can take a look at some of the brainwave states that you have. Now, I'm naturally stepped up into natural frequencies, the alpha and the delta. Those frequencies are very strong. So when I'm already in those natural states, it's really just an intention and an adjustment for me to go into those states and receive information from the Akasha. So it's not like a visual experience where, you know, you're basically just seeing the screen and all of these amazing visuals are popping up. I rarely actually get visuals at all. Once in a while I may, but a lot of it comes through intuitive impressions. So you're getting impressions. It's kind of like what people would call aha moments, right? You get those aha moments, you get those downloads. And that's how I've always flown ever since I started this in the beginning in 2008. So you're basically just getting yourself into a relaxed posture, and you may work with the chakras as well too. And after that, you're starting to move much more into the right hemisphere of the brain. So as you go into the right hemisphere of the brain, that's where all of the information lies. So you're basically training yourself to get out of the left brain and moving yourself much more into the right hemisphere of the brain so that all of this big picture information can come to you. And while it's coming to you, then the left brain is working kind of as a messenger to try to digest a lot of what it's receiving. But you're never going to tell the entire story, so to speak, from the right hemisphere of the brain because it's just so vast. So you do what you can to get bits and pieces of it. But that's really how I do it. It does not take me an effort to do this, because doing this work for 17 years, training yourself for 17 years, doing all this deeper states of meditation, it becomes very natural to you. And you're also just cleaning out a lot of, you could say, interference in the way. A lot of that is emotional. A lot of that is traumatic. All of that starts to subside because you're doing clearing work. Once that's there, it's kind of like an open gate. A gate just opens up, and now you have this connection to the divine where everything is pretty much available to you. So even though I can do tarot, even though I can connect with Adronis and so forth, that isn't really what I mostly do for myself. For myself, it's just connecting to that higher intelligence with the natural aligned brainwave states that I'm in that enables this transmission to come through.
Great. With the Consortium of Infinite Intelligence, which I guess is kind of like the fulcrum from which the Earth Intelligence reports come, it sounds similar to the Ra Collective that the Law of One Material was based on in the early 1980s. So, yeah, is that what we're talking about? I think they described themselves as a kind of social memory complex.
Yes, it's a collective that's similar to that, although they would not identify themselves as the Ra Collective, right? It's the Consortium of Infinite Intelligence. Now, the Ra Collective represents a different consortium, all that together. The social memory complex would really represent a monad intelligence. So what that means is that you're not dealing with a single individual, you're dealing with a collective. Like even Adronis as well too is part of a Sirian collective. He's a spokesperson. He's a representative of it, but he represents the Sirian collective consciousness. And so when you look at Ra, Ra would represent the social memory complex of the Ra collective. So you're looking at a monad of beings. And then when you're looking at the consortium of infinite intelligence, I haven't been able to identify how vast their group is. They're just there, right? So it's like looking at a plane or a dimension that you're connecting with. And I don't even have an ambassador or a representative. Like I said, Adronis is a representative. Ra is a representative. These have no representatives. It's just pure collective consciousness or unity consciousness to which the consortium of infinite intelligence represents.
Interesting. Okay. So what did they have to say about 3I Atlas being a comet bringing a lot of change into our solar system?
It's a very unique comet for that. Now, there are some people who are saying that 3I Atlas is a spaceship. Fortunately not. It's not a spaceship, but it has been monitored and it works together with extraterrestrial intelligence. So basically, these particular type of comets, when they come in, Adronis has referred to them as seed planters. The consortium of infinite intelligence basically says that it is basically a seed that is coming through the star system, and it is leaving pieces of information that's going to align directly into the atmospheres of the planets that it passes through. So it's kind of like an updater in that way. It's basically just moving through the star system. It has a very predicted trajectory. That trajectory is extraterrestrial based. Sometimes you may start to see extraterrestrial spacecraft fly around the comet, right? And so they may be working to hone its trajectory in that particular way. But this is a very unique comet. Out of the many comets that we've had, other than Oumuamua, right? We're going to look at 3I Atlas. It is a very unique comet that's basically, the collective consciousness refers to it as a change bringer, right? It's bringing a great amount of change upon the planet. And my feeling is that it may actually be a transformation of DNA within the planets that it touches as well too. And basically it says that the intensity of this comet when it goes the trajectory of the planets is almost like a small planetary alignment. It has that particular type of intensity. So the collective was basically saying that the comet would pass between Mars and Earth, and that there would be a lot of rippling of energies between Mars and the Earth. So it's almost like a small planetary alignment between Mars and the Earth. So there's a lot of Martian energy coming in altogether. But what's also happening is that this comet almost has like a two-way stream of velocity. So basically there's a strong tail that it has, but it almost has like a tail in front at the same time. It's a very, very unique comet. So not trying to get too much into the scientific details, you know, it's dispersing a lot of carbon dioxide, it's dispersing a lot of nickel as well too. And when those converge directly into atmospheres as well too, that represents a catalytic effect specifically for the planets to move into a higher frequency state of light. So really what we're seeing here is we're looking at much more of an opening of the veils between Earth and even some of the surrounding planets to which 3I Atlas is moving through. So through Mars, Venus, the Sun, going back around to Jupiter as well too. It's leaving an impression. It's leaving a frequency calibration to a lot of the natural atmospheres of the planets that it comes near to.
So this 3I Atlas is a comet, according to the information you got, and it is also being accompanied by extraterrestrial intelligences in spacecraft who have engineered the comet and have kind of like steered it in that particular path so that it could bring about these frequency changes.
Exactly right, yes.
Okay, interesting. Now, the connection between, you talk about them, or they told you about the Martian radiance and the Earth radiance and how 3I Atlas is stimulating that. So how does that impact our evolution as a species?
Well, it's going to evolve our species a lot more. And really, when you look at the nature of the human race, that evolution is not going to be instantaneous as much as what people want to see it be instantaneous. But what it is, it's like a bell curve, right? And we're starting to move up that bell curve a lot more. And as we move up that bell curve, it is the external phenomenon that is going to continue the complement of the elevation up that bell curve. So what we're basically seeing here are people standing up, coming out by the millions, out into these big cities, and basically saying, we've had enough, right? We're not going to leave the world in destruction. We're not going to leave ourselves in destruction. People will start to wake up. But when people starts to wake up, it's such a subtle thing. It's such a very subtle, soft, beautiful thing. It's not something that's loud and boisterous. It's something that's a very, very delicate thing. And even when a comet, a very large comet, well over 5 kilometers, is flowing through our space and going alongside the orbit of the planets at an incredible velocity, it's still a subtle thing, right? So when we're looking at all of these complements to the bell curve of us elevating ourselves, it's going to happen through many different phenomena. So it's going to happen through the idea of solar changes here with the sun impacting the Earth. We're looking at, again, changes with comets. There's even 2 other comets that are coming through right now. One of them is Swan. I can't remember what the other one is called as well, too. But there's other comets that are also coming in, and they're doing their own trajectory, but they're very different from 3I Atlas. 3I Atlas is a very unique one. But again, all of these things are coming together, and the natural evolution for humanity is moving upwards. So a lot of people are in fear, believing that we're going to be taken over by a new world order, or that we're looking at a dystopian society. And I said, my friends, you've been in a dystopian society for centuries. What you're seeing right now is you're actually starting to notice it. And now that you're noticing it, this indicates a great change of being able to transform and evolve past it. So our evolution is getting out of a centralized system. Really where we are headed, it's going to move much more into decentralization. Everything is going to start moving into decentralization, not just our currency, but in the way that we educate our families, the way that we educate our kids, the way that technology will be. Everything is going to start moving much more towards an independent umbrella. Not right away, because in order for that to happen, a lot of these big major corporations, and these corporations even representing governments, because governments are basically corporations as well, they're all basically need to plummet. They need to fall, and something new needs to take its place. And in order for humanity to prosper, you can't keep going through centralized systems. The natural evolution for humanity is to move forward into independence, to getting out of these ruts relating to centralized commerce and centralized governance.
So what kind of secrets can we expect being released through 3I Atlas, especially in relationship to Mars? Are we going to learn things such as Mars was evacuated in its ancient history, and that some Martians came to Earth to form colonies?
Like in the mainstream?
Yeah. Do you think that those are the kinds of secrets that will come out soon?
I'm sure Ancient Aliens will probably talk something about that. In regards to a lot of other mainstream, probably not, because they're still not even really giving a lot of information about what's happening here on Earth in regards to ET sightings, in regards to a lot of military-based videos that have come out where there's such an overwhelming amount of evidence. And even though they revealed some things, there's still a lot of things there that they have not revealed. So before they can even get to Mars or to the moon, they still have to review a lot of this information. So a lot of that is coming, yes. But again, there's also people talking about prophecies as well too, where ETs are going to be showing up and they're going to be helping out humanity in that way as well too. So there's prophecies with that are looking to show up as well. So we are going to, especially between next year and the year after, see a lot more sightings in the sky. We are going to see a lot more reports. But the idea of being able to disclose Mars, there's a bit of a wait for that in regards to the mainstream. But again, like shows like History Channel or Ancient Aliens may certainly talk about that. But other than that, I don't think it's going to reach CNN or any other particular mainstream, not for quite some time. Not until we start getting a lot of the stuff that's happened here on Earth exposed.
Okay, so 3I Atlas is going to trigger some major frequency changes in our solar system and on Earth. And you talked about the impact on the human DNA. So how does that relate to us changing from using 7 energy centers or chakras to 12 chakras?
Mm-hmm. Well, that'll be post 2038. So this is what I've talked about, even just in my last webcast, is where people have asked about that and say, well, Brad, are we going through a very strong DNA change here? Are we actually going to be shifting ourselves into a new type of human being? The answer is yes. You're still going to be physical in this dimension, but there's going to be a lot more information that's given to you. Now, this is not just coming through me. This is actually coming through someone like Edgar Cayce, right? Edgar Cayce was even talking about what's known as an Egyptian timeline, where you have what's known as the pyramid inch. And that when you start to measure the geometry of the pyramid and you start measuring up the vault that basically leads up past the king's chamber, and you calculate all of that together, the timeline for Earth ends in 2038. Now, that's not something I followed, firstly. Basically, I was getting information about 2037 and 2038 going back years ago. And then shortly after I made that reveal, a subscriber of mine talked to me and said, oh, Brad, what you're saying is actually very much on par with what the director of ARE, which is Edgar Cayce's society, was talking about pertaining to 2038. His name is John Van Elken. And he was talking about 2038 being the end of our timeline. I said, oh, that's interesting. So I went ahead and I looked at his stuff. And then I was seeing exactly what he was talking about. I said, okay, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense of why I'm getting 2037, 2038 as a very important benchmark. So as I talked about in the video, you have to imagine a funnel like this, right? And the beginning of this funnel, we could basically trace back, goes back to 2012. And then it basically funnels like this. And the ending of that funnel is 2038. So what's happening right now is there is a collapsing of time. There is basically a tightening of time. This is why event is happening so intensely on the planet, why there is such an amazing convergence of all of these states of events happening all at once. And with this continual strain of events, it's going to lead into a quickening where when we get into 2038, we see the singularity shift. So basically, we're going through this funnel, and then we come out the other end into an entirely new universe. In that entirely new universe, what we can see on the other side is ourselves with 12 centers instead of 7. So again, we have the 6 chakras, and we have the crown center, so that would make up 7. And then when you make this threshold crossing through this funnel in 2038 and you go out the other side, there's a birthing that happens, and it's instantaneous, right? And it's so flawless, it's so seamless. I can pretty much tell you that 90 to 95% of the people on the planet aren't even going to notice that anything's happened. But what is actually going to happen is a chain of events that culminate. It's the end of prophecy altogether. At the end of prophecy, everything that represented the culmination of where we are going as a civilization starts to now form through 2038 and beyond. So we basically have 12 centers. So the new 5 centers that's coming together would be the following. Your 8th chakra, or your 8th center, would represent a planetary chakra, which means that you're able to connect with the earth chakra and being able to get intelligence and being able to feel a lot more of the life force energy through the earth. The 9th center would be the star chakra, which would be linked directly to our sun, being able to connect with the sun intelligence. The 10th chakra would basically be positioned somewhere closer to the center of the galaxy, which would represent your galactic chakra, galactic intelligence of the 10th. The 11th chakra would basically anchor itself somewhere within the universe, and that would be your universal chakra. The 12th chakra, in that sense, would be unity chakra, like your soul chakra in that way. So that is, again, connecting much more to the depths and the nature of your soul to help you understand who and what you truly are. So these would fundamentally be, in the best way I can put it, just through the language, the 12 centers that will become active post-2038. So right now, we do have access to those centers, but it only really comes available to a person who is able to really pierce through the veils and go much more deeper into looking at those particular chakras. I have not even looked at those chakras myself. But through masters, through avatars, they often will come to Earth and they will have access to those particular centers, because those centers are kind of like energy streams that are helping you to understand the greater knowledge of all things. So great avatars, Kalki avatars, for example, would come to Earth with those particular types of activations. Many of those particular types of avatars would often have 12 strands of DNA. And that's another thing that will be happening in the future, is that the new generations will be coming onto this planet with 12 strands of DNA instead of 2. So this is giving us an idea of what we have to look forward to in 2038, where there's a collapsing of the old timeline, or the collapsing of the old universe, and the bringing in of the new one. So what that means is all of these dark dimensions that have represented corrupt takeover, whether you call them archons, whether you refer to them as jinn, whether you refer to them as demonics, whatever it may be, their realms are collapsing, and they are not going to be part of this new universe. So it's like an old rung is being sawed off the ladder, and then a brand new rung is being placed on the top. And that new rung would represent the expansion of the chakras and the 12-strand DNA helix. And of course, people may ask me, well, Brad, does that mean when I go through post-2038 that I'll have 12 strands of DNA? Unlikely, right? But it'll most likely be the idea that the new generations will be coming upon this planet that may show a 12-strand DNA helix. However, a lot of those strands aren't always physical. A lot of them can basically be vibrational, and there needs to be much more of a dimensional aspect, a dimensional overlay for you to see them active in the way that they are, because to actually have 12 strands of DNA is not just working within this physical realm, it's working with all of the other surrounding realms of consciousness all over the place, all around you.
Now, 2038, I mean, that's quite, that's 13 years away. Seems like a long time for a lot of people that are very kind of impatient and want change now. 2027 seems to be something that is resonating with a lot of people, and we're getting a lot of reports saying that that is when ETs are going to be revealed. That's when disclosure is going to happen. So is 2027 another fulcrum point or funnel point?
Oh, absolutely. It's a very big fulcrum points in that way. There's going to be a lot of time, even in 2026, we're going to see a lot of stuff getting revealed at the same time. Now, 2038 is not a disclosure year. See, this is the thing, is that when I'm talking about 2038, and people had that complaint because I actually brought this out like in 2019, and they were complaining about, oh, but I got to wait like 17, 18 years. I said, guys, well, it's not really your choice. This is just the cycle of how things are, right? This is the subtle perception of how things are. I don't care if you are impatient and waiting or not. It's not your problem, not my problem, not anybody's problem. That's the cycle. That's how the cycle works, right? We often work through 12,500 or 26,000 year cycles based upon representing greater transformations on the planet Earth. And we're about to come to the end of that time, into 2038. And that represents a time, because believe me, as you already know, time flows really fast. It's going to be here before you know it. Right? But nonetheless, that's a cycle. But when we're looking at 2026 and 2027, yes, there's going to be some big revealings coming together. There may even be some really big world-based sightings that may come about in that time. But humanity is still going through a progression to evolve, right? What is not happening is ETs coming down here and basically trying to make things better for all of you. Okay, that is what you do not want. Rather, the whole idea is working with ourselves. They have been working with us ever since we came down here in the beginning, right? And they have continued working with us. Now, again, there's a lot of remnant groups that have come together here that are not part of those particular organizations that have actually caused humanity to get into some very, very deep trouble. And that's basically what led to the destruction of Atlantis, right? When you go back over 12,000 years ago, Atlantis was destroyed primarily in the earlier times by off-world intervention. Off-world intervention destroyed civilizations. You don't want that, right? So this is exactly why they want to have a hands-off policy. And they're basically putting this little net around the Earth to ensure those particular types of beings stay out, to not get involved, because it's intervention from off-worlders that got us into this mess in the first place. That is what basically cost humanity thousands of years of potential evolution to evolve and to grow and to learn, because we had these initiate students, so to speak, who thought they were masters, coming down, basically wanting to have all of these desires with women and the resources of the earth, and getting into the king and queen's ear and start whispering these things, saying how superior they are and how they could now start waging war with other lands so that they could make their kingdoms better. All of that came from off-worlders, right? The idea of war is an off-world concept. Humanity was not like that. They were very much in touch with the earth. So again, a lot of off-worlders interfered and came in and basically started a ruckus that brought civilization to its knees. So you don't want that. You want the idea in that sense of realizing that as we evolve, we are eventually going to touch the same star that they do, right? So we're eventually going to go out, and that's basically what 2038 is all about, because that's leading a new era of what we call galactic inauguration. So during that time, there's going to be a lot more spacefaring technologies that are going to come out, and you're going to connect with each other, and that time is going to come. But really the hands-off policy is that an advanced civilization will not touch a civilization like what we're going through right now. They said, no, they're on the brink of basically going through a massive amount of change, but we do not want to interfere with them because, number one, they don't take care of themselves. They don't take care of each other. They don't take care of their planet. So we want no part of them right now. So what we're doing is we're just doing a hands-off policy in the background, and we may show ourselves in certain ways just to get the idea of helping to wake them up, right? To help them elevate themselves and expand themselves a little bit further. But a lot of the times that they do show themselves are for two reasons. Number one is for the earth. Number two is for humanity, right? So earth basically may get a benefit with a lot of these star civilizations coming in and showing themselves very briefly and then leaving, because what you're doing is you're evolving the consciousness of the planet. And through the evolving of the consciousness of the planet, humanity goes along for the ride. So it's basically an expansion state here. So I know a lot of people want disclosure, and we're going to be getting it in bits and pieces, and it's going to get a little bit larger and larger in that way. But in regards to the nature of a first contact, yeah, that will not be happening to at least well past post-2038.
Okay, so
coming up to do first.
Okay, so 2027 then is going to be more about terrestrial politics changing, people expanding their awareness, and maybe little bits of disclosure about extraterrestrial life comes through, but that the really big disclosures are going to happen more than a decade later.
Well, it's going to be big disclosures even coming in within the next year or two, right? So we're not discounting the idea of disclosures happening in a certain way. I mean, we basically have had Congress talking about some very big things about the idea of flying saucers coming out of the ocean, about flying saucers coming out of volcanoes. Those are big topics. That's a big disclosure within itself for people that don't look into these things. For us that look into these things, yeah, big deal. That's just something that's kindergarten stuff, right? But for people who have never looked into it, that blows their minds. Oh my God, these ships are actually coming out of the oceans. They're coming out of volcanoes. They're flying into volcanoes. We're seeing them coming out of the sun. We're seeing all these things. Wow, that's incredible. I did not know that. It's for the normies, right? So these are going to be big disclosures for the normies. Are they going to be big disclosures for us? Not really.
Okay. So with the Mandela effect, I mean, you talked about that in one of your recent videos, and you mentioned that there are these time amalgamations taking place, and that this is related to us evolving from third density to fifth density consciousness. So yeah, can you just explain all that?
Well, it's not that it's evolving us from third density to fifth density consciousness. What it's basically doing is that we're shifting in different worlds. We're looking at different parallel worlds. So even though it is quite minuscule, we may remember that Nelson Mandela was killed in the 1980s in prison, right? He died in 1980s in prison. But now what we see in this particular world line is that we see that Nelson Mandela lived up until like 2009, I believe it was, and he was not in prison. So that would represent a different memory shift, a different memory perspective. What we're actually seeing with the nature of the Mandela effect, because CERN has been messing around with a lot of the timelines that we've been going through, is the idea of these changes and alterations of continuity of memory, right? Like some people, again, will look at the Berenstein Bears rather than the Berenstain Bears, or they'll look at Bragg's apple cider vinegar instead of Bragg. Right? So there's a lot of different nuances that come together by looking at different changes of memory. Even when we look at the map of the Earth, I can remember back in my childhood that Greenland was an entirely different shape than it is right now. I can remember that the Caribbean islands were more further out into the middle of the Atlantic than being so close to off the coast of Florida as they are right now. I can remember that Alaska and Russia had a lot more distance in between them, and now they're closer together. So this is basically telling us that there is alterations through our memory because we are amalgamating ourselves in from different Earths to join a central Earth. So kind of looking at it like different layers, and these layers are conjoining together. So you basically have different beings from different timelines merging into these bodies, representing a merged or converged timeline, remembering different things about the continuity of how the Earth functions right now, right? So again, pertaining to the map, pertaining to a lot of these other nuances I've discussed, and that this is going to continue. Now, this is something that's happened in our physical Earth. So our physical Earth has been going through these shifts. So how has this happened? Like I said, CERN has meddled with quite a few things as well too, but also our own collective shift. If many of you are referred to a fellow by the name of Itzhak Bentov, okay, he was a very, very popular inventor. He invented quite a few devices right now that are basically making a big difference in the medical industry. But he was also very big on consciousness. And as he talked about, that everything pertaining to the past can be changed. Because when you look at the nature of the Earth, when you look at the nature of life, it's always going through a state of flux, right? It's like a film strip. You run it through a projector, and it looks like there's this continuity of motion, but all that's happening is all this conversion of frames. It's all these frames moving through the projector, creating the illusion of motion. Well, the universe works in the exact same way, which means when you have collective consciousness meditations by thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that are wishing for much more of a peaceful Earth to happen, you're actually creating a shift. And through that shift, that merges timelines. That puts you on an entirely new world line that can be like what we've described here, about looking at the changes of different geological experiences of what's happening here on the Earth, seeing how land masses are changing, seeing again certain events that correlate to things that you may not quite remember. You remember something differently. So it's a combination of our own collective consciousness and a lot of the technology that CERN has that has basically amalgamated timelines together. That's the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect is a memory of other different timelines while converged in your present timeline, noticing these differences.
So you would kind of like place CERN as the institution where a lot of these timeline changes are happening, and the Mandela effect as a result of experiments that CERN is conducting, as opposed to, say, these black projects that are happening in the US and Russia and China, where they're kind of like doing their own thing regarding the timeline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, CERN is partially responsible for that. They're not fully. There's, of course, a lot of other programs that do it. You may look at some of these other black projects that are doing certain things as well, too. But CERN basically sticks out the most because its technology is the most obvious, right? So basically, the key to a lot of these secret organizations is build everything quiet, but put it into plain sight. Right? So when you're looking at the nature of CERN with their Large Hadron Collider and so forth and particle accelerators, those can be used in plain sight, but they can basically have a lot of black disclosure projects surrounding that altogether. So CERN has been a partial contributor to the shifting of timelines, but it has not been able to achieve what it's wanted to achieve. And really what it's trying to do is trying to mold Earth into its own image. It's basically trying to shift Earth into a dystopian society. That's really what it's tried to do. But this is why CERN has had so many different complications over the years. There's been a lot of sabotage involved with their Large Hadron Collider and particle accelerator. They've had shutdowns many times over the years because this is really what needed to happen, because they were planning some very dark, devious things to basically try to bring Earth into a lower frequency. And a lot of those frequencies is very much like what Bentov said could happen, is that, again, if there is enough of an intention to come together, that collective energy will actually mold the planet into a particular type of design, right? And that design could be very dystopian, or it could be very utopian, right? The good news is it's moving up into a utopian facet. So again, there's been a lot of sabotage pertaining to a lot of CERN's technology. And I would say a lot of those CERN saboteurs are extraterrestrial in nature. So they would be off-worlders, and they would know exactly what's going on, because here's the thing. When we look at the human guardians on the moon, because I've talked about that we have what's known as human guardians on the moon, well within the many thousands of them, they have looking glass technology, right? And they're able to look at all of these things. They're able to look at where there's sabotage. They want to look at all of these different events that have led to basically looking at very horrendous timelines and how they can prevent it. Well, even going back many years, they would see exactly what CERN was trying to do, and they would have appointed moles coming into CERN and basically sabotaging their equipment. And there you go. So this, again, is something that's taking place, is that we do have off-worlders that are looking for the welfare of the Earth first, and then humanity second.
Interesting. Okay. Important distinction right there. Now, you've talked about secret societies and how they have been running the planet for a long, long time, but that they are collapsing right now, and that the factions are turning on one another and fighting. And so I'd like you to kind of like talk about that and maybe contrast it with what a lot of people think is that, well, you got these white hats or the Earth Alliance fighting against the, the Satanists and the Freemasons and so forth, good and bad, just a straight out struggle between good and bad, as opposed to these different factions turning on one another. So yeah, you want to elaborate? So
there's truth to both. But basically, when you look at the nature of these alliances, and I don't call them white hats because they're not, right? They're not a white hat alliance. These people can be as devious as the very ones that they've tried to move past, right? You have to understand that a lot of these particular types of alliances are ex-communicators from these secret societies, right? But what's happened is that they've seen the light. But a lot of the tactics that they do can be just as underhanded as a lot of these globalists and what they can do as well too. So there's that. Yes, there has been a lot of taking down of underground civilization, of underground installations like DUMBs, right? So we've seen a lot of infiltration into those particular types of bases. And we can see, like, again, small earthquakes can actually happen right to where some of these DUMBs are located. And that can represent the idea of breaking into the installation. And then you have task forces that are mixed between human and off-worlder, and they go in and they basically infiltrate the base. And they basically stop a lot of projects that are taking place that are very underhanded. Very, very horrendous projects as well, too. So there's that. There is that. But what happens is, as these particular dark forces, so to speak, start to lose a lot of their resources, and they don't have all of those toys that they once did, they're now going to start fighting over each other for the little bits of resources that they have left. So it's like looking at a bunch of rabid dogs in a pit, and they're fighting each other over these last little bits of meat, right? And I would say just don't get in the way with them, because they'll tear you apart. So what's happening is you have break-off faction groups that are fighting with one another to try to steal what resources remain from a lot of these different other groups. So these other groups are basically just butting heads and fighting each other. And it's because of a lot of the counter forces. I do not call them a white hat alliance. I call them counter forces. For every force, there's a counter force. So there's counter force groups that are going in, foiling a lot of their plans. And that is where they have lost a lot of resources. They've lost a lot of money. They've lost billions and billions and billions of dollars. They've had assets frozen. They've had properties seized. They've had all kinds of things. Everything that represents their installations, even what we're looking at Ukraine right now, is the complete and total destruction of the underworld, right? And Ukraine was one of their nests. That's Khazaria, my friends. If you ever wanted to know what Khazaria was all about, you look at the Ukraine. Ukraine was Khazaria. Right? So going back several centuries, that's what it was called. And you basically had a land that was full of thieves and murderers, and people that were trying to go through the land would constantly get robbed. They would get killed. There would be massacres if you even just tried to travel through that land. That was, again, like the mafia's territory. And so Russia and several other countries basically agreed to go into Khazaria and clean it out. basically exterminating a great deal of the thieves and murderers that are there, because so many people from their countries were getting killed. And Khazaria was basically just like a bandit zone. So this is karma playing itself out, right? Remnants of Khazaria survived, started going into the West, started ceding their rule there, and now we have, again, what we have today with media and all that stuff, because they're so against Russia. Does anybody here really know anything about Russian history? No, Russia is almost like in the dark. They don't want to tell you anything about that. Because do you know why? Because Russia is the epicenter to the Tartarian civilization. And when you look at the Tartarian civilization, they have still built buildings around with antennas, with domes and everything, and they were able to get free energy. They were able to do telepathic communication through spheres. They had an incredible technology, and Russia used that well up into the early 1900s, before the First World War, right? So there's a lot to Russia that they want to keep hidden, because if you start looking into its past, you will start looking at Tartarian civilization. Because Tartaria went through Russia, it went through China, went through India. Those are kind of like the three big areas. There's also some areas in Europe, like Germany. Germany also had connections with the Tartarian civilization. That's why Hitler wanted to make flying saucers, right? That's why Hitler wanted to make all this advanced technology that really came from Tartarian roots. So again, when you look at Tartaria and Russia, and you saw all the technology there, that would replace all of the crappy digital technology we have today, because that's garbage, right? So you're actually looking at something that's scalar based. You're looking at something that lives off the natural, universal energy that you can attain. So Russia has been their #1 enemy, and they always have been, because Russia went in, slapped them around, and beat them up, going back centuries ago. And now they have a grudge towards that Russia basically has to come forward and do it again.
Interesting. Now, with 2026, I mean, you've mentioned it being a important year for worldwide revolution, and that things like this attempt to pass digital ID may be the trigger for a lot of these revolutions to happen. So, yeah, can you tell us about the likelihood that we are going to witness worldwide revolutions next year?
Well, you can actually just start to see that happen this year, right? We're starting to see many different cities all across the United States that are coming together with tens of thousands, 50,000, hundreds of thousands of people. And we're even seeing this in the UK, that the UK is just completely united. They're almost ready to dethrone King Charles. They're ready to throw him out, right? So then you have Italy doing that. You also had Hungary withdrawing themselves from the European Union, right? It's already starting to happen. This is going to intensify. So basically, we can look at what's happening right now and just blow it up into many different levels of expansion. So you're going to see a lot of other cities follow the cue from a lot of these other corresponding cities in these countries that are doing what they're doing right now. We are looking at complete and total leadership overthrow. We are seeing the overthrow of the globalists. And that's what 2026 represents, not just because I'm getting that intuitively, but when you look at it numerologically, and you look at it astrologically, it supports this. It supports the idea of just like looking at this door that belongs to these globalists, and you have these people ripping the door off its hinges, throwing it aside, and just invading their territory and just throwing them right out of their houses. So you're basically looking at the complete and total takedown of globalists en masse, live and in living color, and looks like the revolution is going to be televised. Right? So that is really what 2026 is about, is many major cities from many different countries are going to be having people out in the hundreds of thousands, perhaps even the millions, each with their own agenda, but really they're going to be throwing the globalists off their chairs. So the globalists are going to lose their thrones altogether. All of these basic globalists in that sense are really just stooges anyways. So they're going to be thrown out of their territory. There's probably going to be some new elections. There's going to be some new leaders coming together. The whole idea of the banking cartels will be forced to change their image. Everything's going through a giant overhaul, but we have to see exactly through time of how this plays out. But it is the idea of the collapsing of an old system and the rising of a new one. Cryptocurrency is pretty much going to be the main currency that a lot of us are going to be using. There probably will be some gold-backed currency as well too, but this is where I've talked about that we're looking at financial systems rather than the idea of a financial system. So we're looking at something that's going to come together. I think we're going to see some treasuries open as well too. A lot of people have contacted me in the past, told me that they have a lot of bonds with a lot of these different treasuries and when they're going to be active. Well, they're probably going to be active here very soon. So a lot of treasuries are going to be open. A lot of resources are going to be brought in the open, and the entire nature of the economy is going to be completely shifted. And it's in a transitional state from going from central to decentral.
Now, the US government shutdown, which I believe is a prediction you made earlier this year, which has turned out to be exactly the case, and we're in the midst of that right now, can you explain how that really is a way in which this kind of takedown or collapse of the deep state is being accelerated, and that these, what do you call them, not white hats, but the alternative force is actually using the shutdown to really just take down the deep state?
Absolutely. Yes, that's exactly what's happening. They're grabbing a hold of their purse strings and they're basically just robbing them dry, right? This government don't think so. It's just because there's this U.S. government that's shut down that's happening, because we want the democratic way of things, right? Basically having everybody to have free healthcare. That's nothing but a ploy. That's a cover up, and that's garbage. Really, what's happening is, number one, the U.S. is completely bankrupt, and number two, they're basically taking the purse strings out of all of these other criminals that are a part of Washington and so forth, and taking a lot of their assets with them and adding it to a new cause. So basically, the whole idea of the corporation of the United States needs to fold, and then turning it much more into a republic of the United States altogether. So the United States will still be around, but on paper, it is going to be of a different name. You'll still see the same kind of country, but it will be a different name. It's moving from the corporation of the United States to a republic of the United States, de factoing an old corporation and bringing something new in that represents a republic. So yeah, there's a seizing of purse strings, and also a lot of these particular criminals within Washington are getting arrested as well too, behind the scenes. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So between arrests, between takedowns, and between robbing them of their own purse strings, this is really what the underlining shadow of the U.S. government shutdown is all about.
Now, with your upcoming intelligence report, which you plan to release on October 22nd, you talk about human guardians on the moon. So what were you told about them?
Yeah, this goes back to probably around 2019 as well too, 2018, 2019. Adronis actually brought it up in conversation, is that he basically wants people to know, because a lot of people are asking about the moon, like who is on the moon right now, what's taking place there. And so Adronis would say that, well, it's for you to know that there are actually human guardians on the moon, which means that the entire situation with the moon relating to its former occupants are basically vacating the moon. So there is a whole new takeover that's taken place on the moon, and we have referred to these beings as the human guardians. And really what the human guardians are is they are yourselves thousands of years ahead. So basically you're looking at versions of ourselves in the thousands of years ahead that have actually come back at this time and are basically being delegates, I would say almost like a very strong high intelligence force that's coming upon the moon. And basically, just like there's a cleanup happening here on Earth, there's a cleanup happening on the moon. So there has been a lot of technology on the moon that has represented, you could say, psychic technology, frequency technology, that has basically bombarded the Earth to keeping it at a very low vibration as it has. So what's really happening is that they're apprehending a lot of this particular technology that's coming together. But it's not so much as easy as just flicking a switch and these things turn off. You basically have to very, very slowly dial these particular technologies down. It's like weaning yourself off medication. So basically they have seized a lot of these particular technologies that are on the moon, and just like a dial, they are very, very slowly turning it down bit by bit, because these particular generators have been maxed out for many, many years. They basically have already amplified it to the highest degree that it can. But again, if you try to turn that off right away, you're basically looking at worldwide psychosis. So you basically have to really, really wane it down very, very gently, very, very small amounts, just so the civilization can start to adjust as they go through these corresponding changes. Because right now things are intense as they've ever been. So, but that intensity is a good thing, because that's telling us that a lot of people have basically got off the mind control of the planet. If they're coming together in the millions and they're filling up cities in that sense, that's telling us that this mind control isn't working. as it once was. So this is the idea of the dial starting to turn down quite a bit. The human guardians basically are here just to take care of the moon. They are working together with other intelligence groups here on the planet. So you have task forces here on the Earth that work together with joint task forces off-world. And a lot of those joint task forces would be the human guardians, as I talked about earlier, with them going into these DUMBs. A lot of these DUMBs have Stargate technology. A lot of these DUMBs in that sense also have kind of like looking glass technology as well too. So a lot of these particular type of technologies are being seized because they were basically planning to do some horrendous things. They were basically trying to blow up a lot of areas of the world. They were basically trying to launch poisons. They were basically trying to launch nukes. They were basically trying to bring about hybrid armies, horrifying things, right? Basically chimeras, what we would often refer to as half human, half animal, right? They had those in underground hangars. It's nasty, right? They also have a lot of old grays, programmable life forms that are still there trying to resurrect a hoax alien invasion. They were trying to do all of these things. They were even trying to bring a clone Jesus into the world and try to utilize that. But these all come from different groups. They all come from different oligarchs. And so again, there has to be multiple task forces that are realizing what's going on and shut these things down before they try to go into fruition. So basically the destruction of the Notre Dame Cathedral, going back quite a few years ago, was all part of a plan to bring about a clone Jesus onto the planet. Right? So that was foiled. And again, a lot of these deep underground military bases have weapons, have stargates, have hybrid armies, all of that, and basically trying to unleash that onto people like it's some sort of dimensional opening or dimensional invasion. That was trying to happen, trying to get the TR-3Bs, trying to get saucer craft to come together and basically put on a show that would represent a hoax alien invasion. They were trying to do that, trying to poison people, trying to bring more of these particular types of viruses. COVID was just the beginning. There was going to be more. And so that's been shut down as well too. So this is what I mean, is that they're losing all their resources and dog is going to fight dog. Dog will eat dog. That's the whole idea. That's the corrupt taking down the corrupt, because they're losing all these plans. All these backup plans, probably like dozens and dozens of them, are basically blowing up in their face because task forces know what's going on. And in order for that precision to happen, you need basically off-world eyes. You need off-world intelligence to give you the information about what's going on. So that's what's happening. Human guardians are working together with people here to form united task forces to go in and clean out a lot of these old agendas that they've been trying to fall back on.
Okay, so these are human guardians from our future, are clearly benevolent, and they're helping us, and they're kind of like cooperating with different extraterrestrials. And also because of all of these frequency changes that are coming in through 3i Atlas and so forth, all of these things are combining to essentially make the deep state kind of like impotent, or they've had all of their kind of resources removed from them. Their plans are being frustrated. So it's a multi-pronged takedown of the deep state.
Exactly. That's exactly what's happening. So basically, how you weaken an enemy is you take away all the weapons that they feel they have, right? So everything is, oh, I'm going to go for this gun. Oh, the gun's missing. Okay, well, I got this big knife under my bed. Oh, the knife's missing. Oh, no, then I got this thing. No, wait, that's barricaded off. So you're basically just stripping them down of anything that would represent an offense or a defense. So that's what they're doing, is they're just taking all their toys away. And so again, they only have precious few resources left. Some of them still have some weaponized satellites. Some of them, again, have control of media. But what is eventually going to happen, too, is the media is actually going to start turning against them, because now you have these opposing forces that are actually funding the media to basically spill the beans on a lot of these particular factions that are about to fall. And we're already just starting to see that, too. So we're going to see that happen as well, too. The very voice of propaganda is going to turn back against them and expose them. Right. So this is stuff that's ahead. We're seeing all these things unfold. And it's like I said, even going back a couple of years ago, that I was seeing this whole time where we'd see these worldwide revolutions happening, is just that cities would just be filled with people, and they're demanding change, and they're demanding that these old leaders are gone, and that their demands are so strong that the leaders have no choice. They have to basically vacate for their very lives, because they're almost ready to hang them from the yardarms, so to speak. So it's going to get to that particular level of intention. This is why 2026 is the year of the fire horse, right? It's that rampant horse. It's that wild horse, like it's on fire and it's just blazing and it's breaking through walls. And you can't stop it. You can't put a lid on it. That would represent the fire of the people. The people now have become unstoppable. And with millions and millions of them, or even dare say billions of them, now coming in as we start moving into 2026, the people are going to be, the leaders of this world are just sweating bullets. And now they're going to be running for their lives. They say, the heck with this, I can't do anything with this. No one will listen to me. And so they basically have to try to bail. But they won't bail. They're basically going to get caught up in many different ways. But like I said, this is what's happening, is the people are waking up. This is telling me that the hypnosis is now starting to end, and now we need to spend the next few years afterwards healing up with all of this stuff that's happened on the planet.
Well, and another factor that kind of like impacts all of this is the inner earth beings and civilizations, and they go back a long time, and they're connected with kind of like the remnants of past surface civilizations. Now, it seems that in addition to these inner earth civilizations, and maybe it's a part of them, is the phenomenon of giants. So how do giants kind of like factor into the whole inner earth equation, and what are these inner earth civilizations and giants doing that are helping impact events on the surface of the planet?
Well, a lot of the giants reside from there, right? So basically, when giants were being swept off the surface of the earth, many of them had to migrate into the inner earth just to survive. And this goes back many, many thousands of years ago. But when we're looking at the idea of giants right now, there's different kind of giants. There's giants in that sense that really don't want anything to do with humans. And then there's giants that are very much happy to open their arms and welcome the human race as part of it. But they're also working together kind of symbiotically as a group in the inner earth as well too. So basically, when you look at the inner earth and you look at all the vaults that are contained there and a lot of the different territories, you have hundreds of different races, hundreds of different civilizations. Just like us, we have lots of different groups here all over the planet, the surface of the planet. But even inside, you have that as well too. So it's kind of like there's nations inside the earth, and some of them will work together and some of them will not. But when you're looking at the giants, well, the giants basically, like I said, depends on the type of giants that you're talking about. But there are some giants that are very enlightened, and they will work with the heart of the earth, and they will commune with kind of like the greater consciousness. All of these particular races that move into that higher state of enlightenment don't really make decisions for themselves. They work with the collective. They work with the heart of the earth. The heart of the earth basically directs them. And these particular beings, when you go into the internality of the earth, a lot of it feels higher dimensional. Right? There's a higher dimensional veil that is contained in the inner earth beings. This is what was revealed to me when I was talking to Athena from the Delphi, because I talk to her every now and then. And she's talking about the idea that there are often meetings and there will be beings that will come together. And we're really just following the flow of the earth, of where the earth wants us to go. We listen to her and we follow suit. And it will eventually come together where giants and humans, in that sense, will reveal themselves to humanity, but it's too soon to do that at this time. But there are a lot of enlightened giants, you could say. There's ones that are 10, 15, 20, 30 feet tall, even larger than that. And they basically follow this path of enlightenment. And that path of enlightenment is to listen to the collective whole, not to listen to individual ego. So they are basically taking their cues based upon how the earth wants to proceed with all life upon her surface. So yes, there's many different types of giants involved. I mean, we've had giants on the surface here that were 50, 100 feet tall. As I was talking to you before we went on the air, as I went to South Africa, met Michael Tallinger, and we were able to see this giant's footprint embedded in the rock. And it must have been about almost like 4 or 5 feet long. And that would indicate probably about a giant, maybe 15, 20 feet tall. And that there is a gigantic boulder just outside of that, but it's not a boulder, it's actually a giant's heart, because you can actually see fossilized remains in the shape of a heart sitting like a big boulder right in the middle of this display out in the middle of nowhere. So to have that would probably be a giant couple 100 feet tall. So we're looking at these giants that have been enormous. And there's been many wars in the past, even in the Bible. They talked about the idea of the Nephilim, right? And wars of the Nephilim, and how the Nephilim were renowned, the heroes of old in that sense. So we have had giants here on the surface. We still do have some giants here that may live in caves. Again, there was what's known as the Afghanistan incident with a red-haired giant, right? So that took place. But again, there's also other giants. There's people who have actually gotten footage of a mountain wall opening and actually something going inside and closing directly behind it. So that would be the idea, that you can almost have like these ancient staircases where giants can just go right down into the inner earth and just start living there, because you have all of this room that they can move around as well too. So there's many different polarities pertaining to giants. Ones in that sense that do not like us, and some that are willing to work with us in the future.
Well, I just wanted to show this image here of it comes, I think, from Libya. It's about the 3rd century AD, and it shows an elephant, and with the long tusks, it looks like an adult elephant. And so that person there must be about 15 feet tall. So, right there you have this evidence of giants in ancient history, but today it's all kind of like forgotten.
Oh, yes, absolutely. You also have like even ancient Chinese imagery of people riding dinosaurs going back into the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th centuries. And there's dinosaurs. There's like an ankylosaurus, and then there's like a person riding the ankylosaurus there as well too. So you basically had dinosaurs that were around a lot more recently than what modern science will tell you. In fact, if you went directly into the Congo, people who have gone into the Congo have seen spiders the size of people, have seen snakes that have been 20 feet, 30 feet long. There's actually been a helicopter that was flying over the Congo, and they actually got like an infrared of this gigantic anaconda that must have been 50, 100 feet long that's living right within the Congo, and that there's even a lot of old dinosaurs that are still in the Congo, things like Diplodocus, or even like brontosauruses or something of that nature. So the Congo itself also has a lot of these prehistoric creatures still preserved within its wilderness.
Now, you mentioned the giants working with the heart of the earth, that the benevolent ones doing that. So that raises the question of these inner earth reptilians. People have talked about them. And of course, people have the conception that, well, reptilians bad, they eat humans and so forth. But I mean, there's also sources, ancient sources. I mean, you have in the Bhagavad Gita or the Mahabharata, where they describe the Nagas as kind of like working with Krishna. And so that suggests that there are these benevolent reptilians who are aligned with the heart of the earth. So what's going on there with the reptilians? I mean, do they also have good and bad, and should we work with the good ones?
Well, see, a lot of people will get carried away thinking that if you describe one reptilian race, then that's how all of them need to be. But that's like describing us, right? There's many different human civilizations. And if we think they're all like us, we're going to get paranoid and warring, well, then it's going to be a very unfortunate universe. But that's not how it works at all. Yes, a lot of the indigenous ones are actually quite very friendly, right? What they mainly eat will be like small animals and stuff like that, like rats or anything of that nature. But they would never think of eating humans, right? A lot of them basically have actually been working from humans. In fact, I've talked to quite a few channels and people who have psychic connections directly with a lot of these indigenous reptilian beings. They're very friendly. They're very, very loving, right? They want to see a new age come together. They want to have a time when we can actually start to coexist. But they realize we can't do it right now because they would just freak us out. Right? If they started to reveal who they truly are and bring themselves on upon the surface, we just couldn't handle that as a collective. Right? We have to basically go through some particular type of conditioning training, right? And that may happen in the future, but right now it's too much for our species to handle because we're not used to that. So basically, as I've talked about, is that a lot of reptilians have actually come throughout the human population, and they can morph their shape. Basically, they create thought forms. So again, a lot of people may be aware of this. So, oh yeah, there's reptilians in the population. So there are. It's not so much that they're changing their shape, it's that they hold a psychic impression. But there's certain people who are able to see them for what they really are. And I don't think it's as abundant as it once was. I think it's much more few and far between because they know that humanity is about to go through a normal shift and they kind of want to get out of the way. But there are a lot of benevolent ones. There's one that kind of look like newt lizards. They kind of look like newts or geckos, right? And there's ones that kind of look a little bit more like, I wouldn't say turtles, but they have kind of like that turtle-like reptilian vibe to them. There's ones, again, that kind of look like Komodo dragons. So there's different types of reptilian beings. And there are different groups. You said, I never would ever judge a race based upon an individual, right? If an individual is bad, right? If somebody met a human that's horrible, are we going to judge that entire human race as being horrible? No. So again, we have to look at it from much more of a subjective standpoint. But from the inner earth, we have many different types of reptilian civilizations. Many of them have been here way before we have. So like I said, you have ones that look like newts or geckos, gecko lizards. You have ones that kind of look like turtles. You have ones that kind of look like Komodo dragons. You have ones that look like crocodiles, right? There's crocodile reptilians, alligator reptilians. There's many, right? If we can look at many of the different types of lizards and reptilian species on the planet, you have a sentient equivalent of that, right? You even have dragons, right? Dragons are a different story, though, because they're much more mystical in that way. But you have dragons here on the planet as well, too. So we're not just talking about the Draco. We're not just talking about the Orion reptoid greys in that way that represent a hierarchy, that represent this particular caste system. But caste systems in that sense are actually a product of the Nagas, right? Because Nagas operate in castes. And so basically passing that on to the Indian people, where you have the Brahmins and, right, you have all the different types of caste systems all together. That's something straight out of the Nagas. So you could say a lot of the ancient Indian people were taught by the Nagas, right? So the Nagas, again, can represent these quote-unquote shape-shifting snake reptilian beings, right? And many of them, even many people look at Patanjali, who was, again, kind of like the founding father who brought yoga to the people, was a Naga as well, too. So again, it goes really deeply into our history, and just like what you showed there too, with the giant touching the elephant, this again is telling us there's so much about our history that we do not know. But no, we're not looking at something that's malevolent or anything like that. There's a lot of loving beings on this planet, but they know that the surface really is for humankind right now, and they're basically leasing the surface of the earth for humanity to grow up, because we're not really naturally from here. We're borrowing the earth. We're tenants of the earth. We have a lot of the earth within us, but we're just basically being tenants. We're basically being tenants to help us evolve, because we're going to be touching a lot more worlds in the future. This is just a staging ground for humanity to grow up.
Now, we've talked about the extraterrestrials and disclosure and how that's likely to be pushed back just because it's going to take a little bit more time for us to prepare. Now, what about the gods? There's a lot of people that talk about the return of the gods. I mean, when we're talking about the return of the gods, I mean, if we're talking about the second coming or so forth, we can understand how that could be contrived. But, you know, what if these ancient gods start showing up, whether it's Zeus, whether it's Enki or the Anunnaki, or it's Kalki, Indra? I mean, are we talking about beings that in relationship to extraterrestrials who maybe live 3,000, 5,000 years, that these gods actually live a lot longer? Some of them might be immortals. I mean, is there a different category here? I mean, are the gods different to extraterrestrials?
Well, here's the secret, is those gods have already returned, right? And they are working together with the human guardians. They're working together with all this, but the best way to say is that they are mad, okay? But they're not mad at us. They are mad at the controllers of this planet for what they have done to their children. Okay, so they are very much on our side, and basically they want to lop off heads. So really what they're doing right now is initiating these particular types of acts that are going to get the people to stand up and flush the parasites off this planet altogether. Adronis made this announcement not too long ago as well, too, is that the ancient gods have returned. And we basically have seen it. We've basically seen images where we're going to see like another moon behind our moon, right? And so these are often their craft. Their craft will come together through like planets or moons or anything of that nature. They basically have celestial craft in that way. And if you were to go inside, you'd see like ancient pyramids, you see ancient temples, you see ancient shrines, you see all of this ancient technology. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But they're here for their children. So the ancients have already arrived. The ancient gods have already been here, the ones that have been prophesied about in regards to who can make the storms come and go and who can bring about new fertilization of the land and so forth. Yeah, they have all of that. But I think that there's going to be an even greater opening to what they represent. We don't even know exactly what their exact plan is, other than to work with the human race to flush out the parasites on the planet. So you could look at them as Greek gods, you could look at them as Sumerian gods, you could look at them as Mesopotamian gods, you could look at them in any particular form that you want, because it really just leads back to the same energy that they represent. But these are the gods that are basically immortal. They have conquered death. So basically they are able to live right off light, right? They're luminous beings in that way. But just because they're luminous beings doesn't mean that they play nice. Okay, if you violate their children and you violate the sacred ground to which the children themselves have brought themselves on, to which these have been the master contributors on you, and your parasites trying to take over this planet, they're going to want to cut your heads off. And that's exactly what they're going to be doing here. So basically every single corrupt oppressor on this planet that has spent so much of their life bringing other people in horrible misery, murdering thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, that person is about to get their heads lopped off. So this is exactly what's happening, is that as we go through the shift leading into 2038, those realms will not be in the new universe, right? This universe is basically collapsing on itself. We don't know what happens to it after that takes place, but you're looking into a whole new universe that's coming out post 2038, but it's going to be so seamless. Like I said, many people aren't even going to know that it's actually happened. But this is what's taking place, is all of those particular forms of beings are being condemned almost into like the very underworld that they came from. And they may have to stay there for a very, very long time, almost like how biblical prophecy was talking about.
So by the gods then, we're talking about these beings. I mean, in the Mahabharata, they talked about the Rakshasas, the demons, versus the devas, the positive beings. That these positive beings, the devas, are working with progressive forces to kind of like protect humanity and undermine and remove from power the deep state. And they're kind of immortal beings that are here, but they're in the background, they're watching. So what can we expect in the future? I mean, 2038, are they just going to like stay in the background, or are they going to come forward in some kind of harvest type event?
They will talk to certain people that are ready to receive them. And that's the best way. It's not for all of humanity to receive it, as much as we would love that. That's just something out of a science fiction epic, really. But that's not really what's happening. Is the people that really represent a closeness to them, they will see them, right? I've gotten impressions of these particular beings as well, too. I've even just had, not too long ago, a very divine vision with Mother Shakti, right? So there's just certain people upon the planet that will see it. But it's, again, there will be people who will know nothing about this. And then there will be people who are very much in their wavelength to where they will see them. You see, they're not here to basically fulfill an ego and say, hey, humans, we're your parents. We're just letting you know this. And then they just go and waltz off. It doesn't work that way, right? Once they have basically brought themselves and ingratiated themselves upon the planet, it's like their souls are holding this world together, right? It's not like looking at some particular type of material form, because these beings have transcended material form, right? They're not materialistic beings. They don't have a physical body, although they can manifest one, but that's not what they represent. They are living gods, right? They are living vessels of gods. And so you're looking at them as much more as light than anything else. So they can't just come down on a spaceship and say, hey, humans, we're your parents. Okay, it doesn't work that way. But it's the whole idea is that people that are in their wavelength, they will connect with. And there will be people like that saying, yeah, I was able to connect with the ancient Anunnaki gods. I was able to connect with the Devas. I was able to connect with the Nagas. I was able to connect with the Elohim. I was able to connect with the Mesopotamian gods. They will represent themselves as those beings, the ancient Hindu gods, right? They will represent that. And it's letting you know that they have arrived. They're here. They're already here right now. And they're all around us. So you can't look at it from a physical, materialistic perspective. You have to look at it from a spiritual one. So when they're here for good. They're not going anywhere.
So what can we do as individuals, kind of like looking at all of these incredible things happening around us? What can we do to kind of like accelerate the positive changes? I mean, is it all about developing unity consciousness? So how do you do that? I mean, what would you recommend to people who say, yeah, I'm all with you, Brad, on this. I want this to happen. And, you know, how do I improve my unity consciousness?
Participate in mass meditations. That would be one of the best ways that you can do it, because there's a lot of people that are holding mass meditations. It doesn't require that much of you other than just your presence, right? And it's just the idea of saying, can I see the world at peace? Can I see everybody holding hands? And that's all I'm really doing in meditation, is I'm just holding hands, like I'm seeing a long line of people, all 7.5 to 8 billion of us, just holding hands across the earth. And you may just feel like the idea that the trees have hands, the grass has hands. It's like all of nature is just raveling a hand together, and it just needs you to hold it. As you're holding these hands, you're interconnected to everything. And so that's a very simple meditation. I would say just do a hand holding mass meditation, putting your intentions out to what the group is focusing on. You don't want to deviate from what they're doing. If they're basically meditating on world peace, then you want world peace within your heart too. That's how you interlock with the group. So instead, I want to look at ETs. Well, then that's not the meditation for you, right? So you can always go within yourself and start doing your work, as I've talked a lot about in my channel, is working with breath work and working and mineralizing your body and helping yourself out. Right? I work with Kundalini healing power with people, and I go in and I start cleaning out their entire energy systems, and they start feeling amazing after that. And they may say, okay, Brad, what can I do now? I want you to go into meditation. I want you to hold those hands. I want you to connect with that. I want you to look inside your body, make sure you're feeling good. And all of that goodness that you're feeling inside your body, distribute that to other people as well too. So participate in mass meditations, work together with yourself, work with your energy. If you need a helper, I can be one of those helpers to help you out. That's what I do. But also just going within and just eating clean and taking care of yourself, listening to the heart, connecting to the heart, right? The heart is not, I'm not talking about an organ here, my friends. I'm talking about the very center of your being. That's the heart I'm talking about. So you're learning to open up that heart. You're learning to expand that light out. And that just comes through simple intention, right? Go into the heart, feel the light, expand it out. Go into mass meditation, start working together with others, hold those hands and start bringing that forward. Start helping out your fellow neighbor, start helping out your family in all of this way. There are many ways that what you can do to help yourself out and to help the world out.
Wonderful advice. You want to talk a little bit now about your website and what people can find there?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So again, I have a brand new service right now, and I was just talking about this with Michael before we came on the air, and it's referred to as the Personal Transcendence Package. So if you scroll down a little bit, you can actually see the page here on the homepage: elimination of physical ailments and karmic patterns permanently. So what you're basically doing is you're doing a subscription-based service with me, where I'm being your spiritual liaison, and I'm actually cleaning you out. So I'm working with the Kundalini healing power. I'm going in, I'm flushing out a lot of these toxins within the body. And I also work with you for a full month with priority email support. I also get you to work with mineralizing your body as well too. And you basically just have me as your spiritual liaison for 30 days or longer. If you want to do additional subscriptions as well too, you can. It's month by month. And of course, I also have the new Trauma Transcendence Technique book, as we see here. But I also do private sessions, right? So if you want to have a private session with me or a private session with Adronis, you can do that as well too. So you can look into the Personal Transcendence Package. Like I said, it is like a subscription-based service. Every single month you can renew, and we can look into much more deeper things, deeper work that you want to have done. I also go in and I start cleaning out karmic patterns. I work with something called a sentinel consciousness, and that's something I can talk to you about if you want to email me and ask more about that. More than happy to talk to you about that. So between private sessions, one-to-one, that's held on Zoom, and then the Personal Transcendence Package, which is done offline. But again, I have priority email support with you, and of course, the new Trauma Transcendence Technique book. You can find all of this on wisdomtransmissions.com.
Well, I want to thank you, Brad. It's been an incredible session. You've shared a lot of wisdom there, and I hope people follow up and visit your website. And I definitely will be looking at some of those global meditations, join those. And I do love that image of holding hands. Very simple, but very effective. I think that's a great tool. So again, thank you.
Thank you. And again, you guys can also check out the YouTube channel, just like we were talking about today with the Earth Intelligence Report. That happens every single Wednesday. That is a live stream. And then every Friday is the Wisdom Nexus. So a lot of the stuff we were talking about today comes from those webcasts. So again, you can get the YouTube link from wisdomtransmissions.com, or just type in Brad Johnson Adronis on YouTube and you'll find my channel there. It's called the Wisdom Nexus.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you, Brad, and aloha.
Thank you. Aloha. Take care.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.